Hello everyone and welcome back to the Retro Recall. I hope you're doing awesome. Today we have something a little different on the bench than we're used to covering. We have an all-in-one PC by Gateway that's been graciously donated to the Retro Recall by longtime supporter Aaron. So Aaron, thank you so much for donating this system to the channel for us to all go over and enjoy. Now, all-in-one PCs are not my cup of tea. I do love desktop PCs, even the smaller form factor PCs. I prefer that because I don't like the idea of the LCD panel or LED panel, depending on the age of the system, going bad and having to deal with that while it's actually a computer. I realize these come with video out on them and you can circumvent it by going directly to an external monitor. However, I don't like that idea of point of failure for one and lack of usability. I also don't like about all-in-ones personally. Again, this is me working on these actual systems. I find them very cumbersome to get around. Even some of the newer laptops for end user accessibility and having to do upgrades and things like that. So I always found those challenging for that. So this is something I generally don't feature on the channel, but when Aaron donated this to the Retro Recall, I figured, hey, you know what? Why not? Let's go over it, see what it is, and go from there. So you know what? We have lots to do. Let's get right to it. And here we are, and welcome back. So we're going to go over this system here. As I mentioned earlier, this is a Gateway 1 all-in-one Z or ZX400 PC. And so outside of the model, I don't know much more about this system, as I indicated earlier. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of, scratches and grime, and there's a couple stickers here and some residue and things like that. We're going to get all that removed, assuming that the system powers up. But, one of the things that they were doing, aesthetically pleasing, I guess, is this piano black type of finish. And unfortunately, with that type of finish, it just attracts all the scratches and smudges and fingerprints and everything along those lines. And there's not much you can do with that outside of replacing that bezel with something new or painting it or doing something differently. We're not going to go through all that effort today, but that's just my observation. So here we do have what looks like a sticker here. We're going to take that off a little later. But we have a sticker here that looks like it was covering off, it's duct tape actually, covering up a camera eye lens. So, I mean, what have you, some of the newer systems now today have a little slider shutter that you can close and activates and deactivates the camera. But I guess the end user who had this was did not want any chance of anyone looking at them, so they covered it up. So down here we have the Gateway insignia here, and it actually has a power LED next to it. So if I push that in here, you can actually feel that it's pushing it in and out to activate the system. We also have the Windows 7 Intel Pentium inside and Dolby Home Theater case badges, if you will, that are on the system itself. And over here we have, or along the bottom, I should say, it looks like, like a speaker type bar along the bottom, but there's actually just two little cutouts here. You can see, if you're in person, you can see through the mesh that's here where the actual speakers would be. And I like the design of the little legs here. I mean, they're just kind of like clear plastic here, and they don't feel cheap. I mean, that feels like a very, very strong plastic that kind of accents around the bezel. So you can see the plastic continues right along the top and down the side. So again, being aesthetically pleasing, trying to compete in the market with end users saying, hey, space-saving design. We have this all-in-one computer that can fit everywhere. No more bulky desktops that you have to deal with. It's all-in-one system and what have you. So again, if you're going to put it anywhere, you want to make sure that it looks good too. All right, let's swing it around here and see what we have. So along the back, we're carrying along the same glossiness of this entire system. Look at all that residue. It just looks like there's a pile of stickers that were on here. Okay, so along here, it looks like we have some ventilation ports along the top here. So obviously he rises, so it's nice to have that ventilation. It's also tilted back towards me, the monitor, no doubt for ergonomics when you're looking at it from the front of the PC. So along the back here, we do have what looks like an audio out jack, and then we have a plug here. So I'm not sure if a different model would have something else that would go here that would have, again, this would have been a universal probably chassis that was used for different variations of this model. Then we have built-in Ethernet here. We also have 4 USB ports, is very handy. Obviously, if you're using this as an all-in-one, having those ports is very handy. And here we have, again, looks like another kind of punch out that you would use for another port. Again, not exactly sure what would be part of that, but my gut feeling tells me it's for a different model or different line of this series. Over here we have the power button as well, or the power input, similar to what you would use for a laptop. And then here we have this hinge that actually folds all the way down and then goes out quite a bit here, depending on what angle that you want to put the system on. And it kind of feels like there's little stops as you go. So this kind of, allows it to close all the way. And then you feel like a little kind of clip there that holds it in this place. And then the weight of the machine holds it any further past that middle point. I'm just going to put it back to where I kind of feel like is the default. And over here we have what looks like a Kensington lock, and not too often you see that on larger systems, but I know on some of the newer mini PCs and the smaller desktop form factors, they do have that now, because I mean, they're so easy to just put in your pocket and walk away. So it's good to have the Kensington lock there, and similar to this machine here. And then we have, it looks like additional ventilation on this side here, and then the Windows 7 key here. This optical drive that seems to be built into the system here on this side. So it looks like we have a multi-card reader here, as well as an easier access headphone and microphone jack on that side. Over here, we do have the 2 USB ports here as well, giving the system an optimal 6 USB ports. So you have 1 for the keyboard, 1 for the mouse, or 1 just if you're using a Wi-Fi combo. And then of course you have 5 or 4 additional ports depending on your configuration that would allow you to connect various devices to this machine. Now, the one thing I'm noticing quite a bit on this machine, and you probably saw me earlier in the reflection there, is that it's so glossy. And that's one of the drawaways for this system in my eyes. Not just the piano black type finish here, which is very scuffed and scratched and residued up. I mean, we're going to do our best to clean that up, but it will never be perfect. But on the actual screen itself, it is extremely glossy. One of the things is I love, I've said this before on all the notebook PCs that I've worked on, is I love that matte finish, that professional matte finish. And, I get a lot of discussion around that because the gloss, obviously enhances your colors of the image you're viewing. And also when you have a touch screen, which I believe this is, then you would have that gloss appearance as well as a result of that. It's not damaged. Like, I don't see big pieces of plastic on the ground here, big cracks. And usually around the hinges and things like that, you would see cracks, or if it was dropped, chip on the corner or what have you. So given all of that, it seems to be okay. All right, I'm gonna get this situated. I'm gonna turn it around. I'm gonna get the power cord out and we'll see if we can get the system powered up. Okay, and we're back here and we have the system all set up here. I plugged it in. Again, it's just like a laptop power brick that comes with the system. And then we also have just a Dell USB keyboard and a Dell USB mouse that I have connected today. I do not have a Gateway mouse and keyboard, otherwise it would be really nice to see that matching. Okay, so it says press F12 for BBS pop-up. Initializing USB controller is done. Looks like we have 3 gigabytes of memory. USB devices is detecting a keyboard, not the mouse, but I mean, I don't know if that's just because that's what's required for the startup. And then it says here we have a hard disk and CD-ROM drive installed, so it shows what our 2 ports are. It looks like it's an Hitachi drive here. I'm not exactly sure in terms of size. Smart capable. Status is okay, which is nice. And then of course we have our DVD RAM drive. So CMOS settings are wrong, date and time not set. So I may end up replacing the battery in this if that's the case, if it's easily accessible. And then Del to run setup and F1 to load default and continue. We're gonna hit DEL for the BIOS setup here. All right. So quite the interesting aspect ratio of this screen. I'm not sure, I think it's a 20-inch screen that's on this, or 21-inch. I'd have to look at the specs on this for sure. So under product information, we'll click on that, and there we are. So we have a Pentium dual core T4400, 2.2 gigahertz CPU with 3 gigs of RAM. There's our model number, so our ZX4800, and it shows here BIOS release date of 2009. So it gives us a rough idea of when this system would have been released. And I believe Gateway was purchased by Acer Core as well. So yeah, so this would have been either at the time of Acer or shortly after that acquisition. So under standard CMOS features, we just have your regular ports that we have that are set to auto-detect a hard disk and a TAPI CD-ROM drive. And it shows that we have been up for 2 minutes here. So it just automatically resets that clock because we don't have a battery installed. Advanced BIOS setup, so nothing too fancy to go in here outside of the boot devices. It's just set for the hard disk first, then the CD drive. We're gonna actually swap that. Actually, won't matter because it won't save it anyway for now, but I'd like it to always check the CD-ROM drive or optical drive first before going into the CD drive, strictly because of, saying, booting from a boot disk or something like that. Okay, all right, so we're gonna back out of that for now. Advanced chipset features, you can go in here and change different memory settings and things like that. We don't need to touch that right now. Integrated peripherals, so we have our onboard SATA controllers, USB controllers, our audio and LAN controllers. I mean, they're all enabled. Nothing we need to change in here right now. That's all by default. Power management, not much to show in here. It's just typical power management stuff. Under our PC health status, so that's interesting because of being an all-in-one, it's nice to see this. So it is showing that CPU is running at 50 degrees Celsius. I don't know if that's high or not for this CPU. I don't tend to see Intels running that warm, but that's something that I have to take a look at. Okay, so it must be a threshold that's set to when it's enabled, the smart fan. So at least my concern was the fan wasn't working, and the fan is operating on it, so that's good. Because I did hear it at the very beginning, and I kind of forgot when we were going through this, but you can see the CPU cooled down from 51 degrees, now it's sitting down at 41, and it's going down even further. So that's good. So I'm just going to keep that disabled for now, the smart fan, because I like to have that running. I mean, it's not a very in-depth BIOS. It gives you everything that you need for this particular PC. I mean, you can't do a lot of, I like going in here and going, is there something that I can do in terms of like overclocking, or is there anything, to tweak and things like that? There's not a lot to do in this BIOS, which is fine. I mean, it's an all-in-one PC. And the newer PCs that are all-in-one today, you get a lot more features. You can do a lot more configurations with them. But at the time when these were kind of retail systems sitting in boxes on the shelves that you would go around and say, I need this for schoolwork, or I need this for, it's going to sit in the little nook in the kitchen. Some people built them for all-in-ones and things like that. So it may not be necessarily a very big powerhouse PC for sure. Next thing we're going to do is kind of take it apart now. I'm going to flip everything kind of around. We know the system powers up. It does post. You don't hear the regular excitement out of me when it posts because of just what the system is. But again, it's good to have the system posting. And now the next step we're going to do is take it apart and see if we can look inside and see how difficult it is to actually do that. So here we go. Okay, and we're back here. And the first thing I'm going to do is just remove these two little screws here that I see. They're very tiny screws, kind of like laptop screws here. And I do have a I do have a little mat here set up here, so we'll be able to put the screws in there so we don't lose any of these, because I believe that needs to come off before the back of the panel comes off here. So this here, let's see if that comes off. Yeah, sure enough, there we go. All right. Sorry about the reflection, everybody, but that's the nature of the beast here. Let me see if I can tone that down a bit. Okay. All right, so we have it looks like a couple screws here and a couple screws here for the hinge. And here it looks like we have a hard disk, and then we also exposed the rear I/O panel here. Looks like this USB port here is quite damaged. The other three look good, and everything else is looking good. But you can see here where there'd be other kind of like, this is for the audio, but this is where they're kind of covered up on that plastic originally. You can see that there's punch outs here. I'm not exactly sure what would go here, but there's definitely something on the motherboard that you could insert. Potentially another port for maybe a TV out port or something like that for this. I'm not sure, but again, just interesting to see that there for making provisions for future growth here. Okay, so this particular screw here I'm removing it, but I am seeing that we have a ground strap wire to that screw. So we have to keep that in mind when we're putting this all back together, that we do have to make sure that the ground is associated with that screw. Fairly straightforward so far. A couple screws to access the back, a couple screws to access and remove this. So hopefully this just comes out, and it looks like, I think it does. Yeah, it does. Okay, so there we go. We just have the stand assembly to remove there now, so that's out of our way. Okay, the next step here we see is a hard disk. Looks like a hard disk here. We have, looks like SATA connections going to the hard drive itself. It looks like just a standard platter drive. We're not looking at installing any upgrades in the system today. We're just literally looking at restoring it, right? So we're going to do here is just remove, it looks like there's a screw holding on this caddy here. And we'll see if we can just kind of take this out here. I'll remove that wire first, that SATA wire. It looks like it's taped on by the looks of things. I mean, if you did have a hard disk failure, that is probably the extent you'll have to go to remove the hard disk. But you can see it's a SATA hard disk that's installed in the system. And yeah, let's just see. I'm not sure exactly what this hard disk is outside of what we saw in the original setup. So I'm just going to remove the screws real quickly, and let's take a look at this drive. All right, we have a Hitachi drive from November of 2009. It is, let's see here. See if it gives us any information. Yep, 7200 RPM drive. So that's, at least in terms of spinning rust, you definitely want to have something like that, barring, of course, going into a SCSI type hard disk. But that's definitely good to have in there for that. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is remove these kind of 4 corner screws that we have, it looks like, on the chassis. And I took off the optical drive cover there as well, just in case it has any difficulty with removing this plastic bezel. And these screws are so difficult to remove. Okay, we have the screws all removed. We have the 4 screws removed from the panel. We have the optical drive cover removed. And of course, we have the back I/O shield removed as well. So we'll start to just kind of pop this off here. And this is just the back chassis. There's no other screws that I'm seeing that are connected. You'll know as you're doing this if there's anything, because if you have to force it, you know, you should rethink your approach. But everything looks pretty good here. So let's take this back chassis off now. Okay, so I have the back kind of all unclipped there, and you can just use a plastic spudger tool to go along the sides there, or like an old credit card or something like that. You can get around the edges and it releases those clips. One thing I want to do call out though is that this does have a wire. That's the ground wire I talked about that was associated with this, but it's also a little connector here to the motherboard. You need to make sure you remove, because that is controlling the card reader here on the side, as well as a couple of audio ports. So you just want to make sure you have that removed there. So we'll take that out of the way. All right, start of the show. We have the inside of our machine. So what do we have here? Yeah. So we have a couple speakers here. We have our wire going which was to our hard disk here as well. We have our rear I/O, which looks like there's another shield on top of this again, which we're going to have to remove to be able to get at the CPU. And potentially, presumably, this is where there'd be a battery here as well, or in addition to that, our RAM. And it looks like there's a little arrow here. So I'm looking to see where the arrows are. There's no error written here, ironically enough, yet it is required to remove the shield, but there is one here, so we'll unscrew this one. Okay, so we have the back removed now, and we have a really good view of the motherboard. And here, sure enough, here's our memory here. We had to remove a couple of the wires, but it shouldn't be too hard to put in. So we have what looks like a 1 gig and a 2 gig stick of our memory DDR2. It looks like it is 800 memory. Again, I'm leaving it as is. We have Windows 7 32-bit on here, so that's probably just fine for what we need. And then we also have this kind of like heat sink going along here, which helps dissipate the heat along to this area here for the fan to be able to blow out any sort of heat for the, looks like the chipset, as well as the CPU itself. Again, I'm not seeing any coin cell battery in here. I'm hoping not to have to take the whole motherboard out of the system to access that. So I'm going to do a little more poking around and research here. But first, we're going to move the cooling assembly from the motherboard. Okay, so I looked around the whole motherboard, and obviously I don't see anything to do with the coin cell. And we're this far, so we may as well replace the coin cell battery as well. And so I removed the Wi-Fi antennas from the Wi-Fi card here. I referred to this as a chipset earlier. I believe this is the graphics card itself. So that's where the heatsink tunnel is going to dissipate the heat from that area. And you can see the old thermal paste there as well. So I just removed all these little wires from the motherboard. And sure enough, you flip it around and there's our coin cell battery just hanging out there on the flip side of it. So to replace the coin cell, having to take out the whole motherboard, I think that's a poor design. And again, one of the reasons why I find it challenging working on some of these systems, because you never know, how compact they made them, or how far they had to go to get them to this state. So we have that installed now. There's a brand new fresh coin cell, and I'm going to tape that up as well, equally to what they did, just because probably so that it doesn't make any contact with the rest of the board. So I'm going to do that right now. We have our brand new battery installed there, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. So we're going to reorient the board here and get everything put back into place. Okay, so we have everything reassembled here. I have the back shield put back on. And there's a lot of navigation around all these different wires that we have here. I believe I have everything installed correctly again. I just kind of rerouted everything to where it kind of naturally fit back into the system. And it's just really, important to be mindful of those wires as you're going through here and making sure that you kind of remember where they go. And the next best practice, of course, is once this is done, to essentially fire up the system before you put all the back panel stuff back on, just to make sure that everything spins up. I mean, we're going to take the risk here. Pretty confident that everything is plugged in correctly based on what I'm seeing here. I also reseated the memory and sprayed some contact cleaner in there as well. The fan, everything is super clean in here. So I don't know what environment this was in, or if this was previously removed or taken apart, but I mean, there was no dust in there. I'd used a little bit of IPA, cleaned up inside here. I also applied some new thermal MX4 paste to the CPU. And as for the video card area, I also utilized it was actually on the other side of it, so I put that on there as well for the die. So that's all done. And yeah, and of course the coin cell is replaced. The motherboard's back in. Everything's looking pretty darn good. All right, so we also have the hard disk reinstalled here. I have that all kind of screwed back in, and I reconnected the SATA connectors here to the board, because that was all separate as well. So we have all that back in. So I think the next step here is to put the back panel on and reassemble that. So let's keep on going here. Okay, and here we are. I mean, outside of the reflection you're seeing and all the little micro scratches, I had used a microfiber cloth to clean out clean off all the sticker residue. And I'm using 99% IPA to be able to get all that, get that all off of the system. So let's get the bench all reoriented here and get a better look at this system again. Okay, and we're back after some grueling scrubbing of the front of the screen here. So was able to get all the tape residue off the screen, and I used some just standard screen cleaning spray on the screen itself, on the surface, just to kind of get it all cleaned up. I did go online, and courtesy of archive.org, we do have the full recovery set of DVDs for this system. At least it says it is. I haven't tested these yet. So we are going to restore it, trying to use the original factory discs with this system so we can live and bask in all the bloatware that Gateway would have provided with this computer. Outside of that, if it doesn't work, I mean, I'm happy to install a version of Windows 7 using the 7 key that's on this computer. The first thing we're going to do is pop on the computer and make sure that all the work that I did is not all for naught. So it's coming up with the same errors we had before. So it does say the CMOS settings are wrong and the date and time are not set. So we're going to go into the BIOS and take a look at everything again. So remember earlier, as I said, that everything that we would have done, so for example, the PC health, it should be enabled, yeah. Because remember, we changed that to disabled and restarted the system and put it back, and the fan sure enough kicked on, because you can see the CPU temperature climbing here. I'm going to leave that on for a few more minutes like this to see if it makes a difference in terms of, you know, is the smart fan actually going to kick on or not? Okay, so under product information, everything stays the same here. So it is detecting the 3 gigabytes of memory. I'm rechecking this because I want to make sure that me reseating the memory didn't change anything. And to be honest with you, it would be absolutely suck if it didn't detect it, because I have to go through that process again. So it's nice to see that detecting it. And of course, our CPU is there. And this time I am going to, so before I continue, I'm going to adjust the date and time here. So let's go up here. Okay, so I have the date and time all set there. That should be correct now. And under our advanced, we're going to change this a little bit. I want the CD drive to be the primary. Okay, so it's basically giving me the configuration of, we'll try the hard disk or the optical drive first, any removable device you have, the LAN next, and then the hard disk. That's fine for me. Under our PC health, let's check that again. All right, so I'm not loving that. It's now raising the temperature up to 60 degrees. You may be in the comments saying that's perfectly fine, the CPU can handle that, but yeah, I'm not going to trust that. I'd like to see that in a 30-degree range for what it's doing, specifically if it's just idling. I'm going to save and exit setup, and we have all the changes made. And I'm going to restart the system here. We're going to go back into the BIOS here and just make sure that it saved all of our information. Okay, it did, but this time the fan did not turn on. I'm wondering if I plugged the fan back into the fan power. All right, I gotta take the back all off. I gotta re-inspect all this because I don't think I put the fan back on, and I don't want to cook that CPU. So I'm gonna turn that off right away. And when I get back, you'll see all this kind of back together. Okay, and we're back. Yes, over a half hour has gone by in real time, and I have taken this machine completely back apart and took everything right down to the motherboard again to be able to notice that I did not plug in the CPU connection for the fan. And I feel like a complete goof for completely missing that. And I'm sure a whole bunch of people, if you had seen through the montage, like kind of the fast forward, that you probably were screaming at the screen going, plug that in. Anyway, I'm glad I noticed it now. The CPUs are built to handle some sort of abuse like that. So I'm not too, there's definitely some threshold there that we can get by. So I'm not worried about any sort of damage to the CPU. Yeah, let's turn it back on and make sure that everything I just did works, to be honest with you. I'm going to hit the Del key to see if we can get into the BIOS here. There we go, sure enough. And let's go to PC health right away. Yeah, I can hear the fan running just fine. You can see it running here. I'm going to pop in our DVD, our restoration disc number 1. If it goes in the drive, there we go. Pop it in, should spin up there. And I'm just going to do escape here, and we're going to exit without saving because I didn't make any changes. And see if it will boot off of the DVD drive. Windows is loading files. That's perfect. Okay, so everyone has seen a Windows 7 installation before, so I'm going to go through the process now to get Windows 7 restored using all the recovery CDs for this particular system. So here we go. And here we are at the desktop after that very lengthy, I will say, recovery. In real time, it's been about 2 hours, and we do have the system all set up now, and it is full of bloatware, which is exactly what I was looking for in this video. And I wanted to make sure that everything was installed correctly, including drivers, etc. Yes, there's other methods, but I love when I get these systems and I find the original restoration software. I'm able to do a full restoration just to kind of see what this system would have came with back in the day. All right, we won't stop here. So let's keep on going here. Let's go right into my computer first, and we're just going to check out the actual hardware of this computer. So we do have the disk drive here. That's our 300 gigabyte hard disk that we have installed, the Hitachi. Display adapters. So we have a mobile Intel 4 Series Express chipset family. I mean, it's being treated as a mobile GPU that's installed in this computer, no different than probably a laptop. And our DVD CD-ROM drive, basically our optical drive, we do have the DVD RAM drive installed there. And then our imaging devices, we have our USB 2 camera, it reads it as. We also have our memory card reader there installed. Under network adapters, we do have a Raylink, R-A-L-I-N-K wireless card, and a Realtek PCIe gigabit card there. CPU, we do have our dual core CPU. Our Realtek, just regular Realtek HD audio, so nothing fancy there. And of course, all our USB stuff installed. So the nice thing about using restoration software like this, or recovery software, is that it just restores absolutely everything for you. You don't have to think about anything, it just does it for you. Now, the alternative is, and something I would have done back in the day if I had a system like this, ironically, years later, I want to see this stuff again, but I would have wiped the system, installed Windows 7 fresh, installed all the drivers manually, and having a nice free, clean, fresh system versus being any sort of resource intensive software it would have installed extra on here. Okay, so we're back here to the desktop. So we're going to explore a little bit. We're just going to go to all programs here for a moment and take a look. So we have Adobe Reader 9 installed, and let's keep on going here. Desktop Gadget Gallery. So a lot of these things are part of the Windows 7 operating system, but we do have Office. So we did install Office 2007 as part of this. So it looks like it's a 60-day trial that's part of the installation here. And yeah, let's keep on going here. We have our typical accessories for Windows 7. I don't see anything added extra in there that they would have installed. We do have CyberLink Media Show and CyberLink UCam, so that's pretty cool that, for any sort of graphics or video software, or of course the camera itself as well. So that's great to have. Under games, so yeah, so it did install quite a bit of games as part of this. So we have Bejeweled, Blackhawk, Bob the Builder, Gateway Game Console. There's probably a portal to all the games. Build a Lot 3, Chess Titans, Dora's World Adventure, 18 Wheels at Steel Holland, Escape Rosecliff Island, Farm Frenzy. So a whole bunch of different games that would have installed as part of this. And I do remember specifically with Gateway machines, Acer machines, they install these big game packs. I would have installed or uninstalled all these at the time. I do remember doing that just because they do take up a lot of different resources on the system. So we have Gateway, so Gateway Recovery Management. We have Gateway Touch Friends, Media Share, sorry, Memo, Music, Photo Show, and Touch Portal, which we're going to look at here in a moment. Features of the system, of the all-in-one, that allowed you to do different things to take advantage of the touchscreen. Now, personally, I never liked touchscreens only because of all the fingerprints and everything on them and the risk to the screen. So I just never got into them. Okay, Gateway My Backup, just backup software we have installed here. Maintenance, backup and restore, create a system repair disk. That's one of the things that popped up on the screen while I was installing this, is it really encouraged us to make this set of disks. So whoever did that and upload them to archive.org, thank you so much. I never did check the Acer Gateway website. Again, just probably Acer. I never did check that. It's possible the software is there as well. Microsoft Office, like I indicated, 2007 has been installed, which is a nice touch. Microsoft Touch Pack for Windows 7. So we have Blackboard, Garden Pond, Rebound, Surface Collage, Surface Globe, and Surface Lagoon. So we have Microsoft Works installed. My goodness, Microsoft Works. It's just so cool to see that installed here, even in this era. I started off with Microsoft Works 3, I believe, or 2 back in the day. It was quite older at the time. We have maintenance here. We just talked about that Office we just talked about. Nero. So Nero I'm very familiar with, but nice to have Nero 9 installed here for doing, so we have Express Essentials SE and Start Smart Essentials installed as well. So that's just part of the Nero toolkit to be able to do different media burning and things like that using that optical drive. So it's nice to have that installed. Norton Internet Security, of course, and this is one of the things that tends to bog down the system as well. Great to have it installed, obviously, at the time and what have you, but I went with different versions of internet security back in the day. We have Norton Online Backup, Power Cinema. What's this? Okay, so just probably a DVD player software startup, and of course Windows Live. So we have Live Mail, Live Messenger, Photo Gallery, and Writer. And it does look like we have a fair amount of Gateway software installed on this system, which is, again, what I wanted to see on this computer as part of the journey. And so the other thing is, we'll take a look here. So we do have, I'm just looking at the desktop here to see if there's anything that we kind of missed. And I think most of this is all installed in the start menu here. And it's really cool to have the touch screen functionality. Like I mentioned, is that, that would have been the purpose of this machine back in the day. Like it's said, it's a home-based system. It's more of an entry-level, home-based type system that, used for family and school projects and things like that. And obviously some multimedia and some entertainment as well, which is a really cool feature to have. So we do have, it looks like a CD player as part of the touch software menu here. We also have what I believe this would be more for if you press the button and load up some media, so like more of a slideshow. And of course we have what looks like a notepad of some sort. So you saw I was scribbling on there a little bit, just using my finger here. And the touchscreen is fairly accurate, which is nice. One thing I'm noticing though, I do have to touch a little firmer than I thought I would have to. Maybe it's just because I'm so used to using my cell phone. But yeah, we'll just keep on going here. But we have this little kind of like little drop down here, so I'll click that button there, and here we are. So we have the Gateway Touch Portal. Again, more bloatware, all bloatware in the system, which is pretty cool. And yeah, this is basically, I believe, shortcuts to that some of that software, all that software that we have installed here. Let me click on yeah, here we go. So I mean, I have Microsoft Paint open here as well, or as part of the software. And what's Blackboard? what is this? Microsoft Corporation. I don't think I've ever seen this before, to be honest. Is this a... Oh. Okay. I lost. What is this? I've never seen this before. Hit play. I gotta go here. No, I don't know. I'm stopping it before I embarrass myself too much. But I don't think that's not possible at this point. I have no idea what Blackboard is, but as you can see, it would be probably, I'm so used to using the keyboard and mouse that I never really utilized the touchscreen functionality back in the day. And, I think I mentioned this before, but, in terms of touchscreen technology, I never really liked it because of the fact that, fingerprints everywhere, and this is something that I don't like to see all the time. All right, but yeah, this is I think this is pretty cool to see, and you know, being able to utilize this this software here, and yeah, it's all part of the Gateway suite. And you know, again, thank you so much for anybody uploading to archive.org for recovery software. I mean, a lot of these systems, as they get older and people want to restore them and things like that for nostalgia reasons or whatever reasons that they want, they're not able to because they don't have the original software, or they are able to get the system up and running, but they're not able to utilize all the drivers or all the software that would have come with the system back in the day. So definitely neat. All right, we'll click on this again down here and it should restore it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, pretty cool, I think. This is served exactly the purpose what I thought we would do by you know, getting the system up and running. And so, you know what, we spent quite a bit of time today on getting this computer up and running. So yeah, let's go to our outro. And here we are at the end of our very lengthy, at least in real-time video. You guys have the benefit of all the editing and what have you, but it's been quite a journey to get to this point. I mean, when we first got this computer, we have no idea if it was going to work or not. We were able to fire it up, and to our pleasant surprise, we were able to get the system up and running. We have never featured an all-in-one on the Retro Recall before, so very excited and very happy to have this on the channel, and we were able to get it up and running and restored. We were able to take the system and completely take it apart and do an inspection on the inside, applied some more thermal paste to the CPU, and replace that coin cell battery, which I have here. And yeah, it was just really exciting to be able to see what it's like inside, and to be honest with you, guide everyone through the journey of the work you have to do on one of these systems versus, you know, if you have a desktop tower type configuration. Even proved it to myself, you know. I totally forgot to plug in the CPU fan, and as a result, I had to pause the recording and go through all the work of completely dismantling the system again to get to that one little wire that I had forgotten. And that's just the challenge of having an all-in-one. It's very convenient, able to fit in, you know, tight spots. So you need to have an all-in-one in the space. And essentially by having it like this, then yeah, that's the trade-off that you actually have to go through, is being able to be a little more challenged when it comes to taking the system apart, or, you know, you're limited by certain upgrades. Like I can't just throw a different type of video card in here. I can't, I mean, I can upgrade the memory a little bit, change out the hard disk for a faster hard disk, obviously. But outside of that, I think, you know, you're limited by certain upgrades as a result of having this. And again, as I mentioned, other things is that, you know, the touchscreen, of course, is a very nice feature, but having it very glossy is obviously something that I personally don't like. It's vivid colors and things like that, but you get all this glare as a result of from the room lighting. If the monitor does end up going, if there's a problem with the screen, then unfortunately, unless you replace the panel, you're stuck here as well. It's just good to know those things when you go for an all-in-one versus having a separate screen, LCD screen today, and a different type of desktop PC. But overall, you know, in terms of performance and the process, I mean, to get everything restored on the system did take a while. As you can see, there's quite a bit of software. But in terms of performance, the system is running quite nicely with even with all the bloatware that we have installed on the computer. I mean, I'm only using, in terms of the memory, I'm only using 1 gig of memory here, and yeah, it seems to be running just fine. And I mean, the CPU is obviously doing nothing right now because it's not under load, but you know, even if I jump around, it seems to be doing pretty well for what I need to do. And I mean, quite frankly, the system is quite snappy here. Everything's loading up fairly quickly here as I go through, and it doesn't seem to be any sort of hesitation, even when I was loading up things and doing things. And again, the touchscreen is fairly responsive. I think I'm just so used to using like technology of today, like my cell phone, for example, that when I go to do this, it's just, you have to be a little more mindful of what you're doing in terms of your clicking and what have you. But I mean, overall, I would say, you know, time well spent. Well, I just like to see another system that stays out of the recyclers, and you know, obviously, I will work on getting this to someone who needs it. I mean, there's obviously something we could do with the system. I mean, upgrading it to Windows 10 would probably be supportive. I have to look into that, or a distro of Linux on here, and you know, essentially get this on today's internet. Breathe a little more life into this computer. I think it's absolutely worthwhile anytime that we can do that on this channel. That said, if you like today's video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It really makes a world of difference, helps the channel grow, tells the YouTube algorithm to promote the channel across YouTube. Hit the notification button, change it to all. You'll be notified of new content such as this. Please leave a comment down below. What's your opinion on all-in-one computers? Let me know. I'm going to leave it at that because I really want to know about your opinions on this versus like a regular desktop PC and what have you. I respond to absolutely every one of your comments. I love the interaction on the channel. We'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.